Discomfort. One of the hardest parts of living on the Pacific coast was the sheer amount of rain, which would pour seemingly every day. You've got soggy socks, slippery, unreliable hands, and the guarantee that water will pretty much break down anything over time. Sometimes I would go on hikes no matter what the weather was like. Rain or shine, I was going to exercise. But I can barely put into words the utter discomfort after those hikes. But the funny thing is, I look back on those days with nostalgia. Believe it or not, getting soaked, becoming totally disconnected from the warm and inviting parts of the world, it all gave me perspective. It taught me to appreciate being dry, being warm, and being comfortable in general. Returnal is a game where the goal is to make it as far as you possibly can without dying. Dying will cost you a large amount of your progress, your weapons, your abilities, and possibly your sanity if you play this game long enough. In this game, you play as Celine, an astronaut who crashes on the planet Atropos. Thankfully, our astronaut is able to survive her crash landing. Celine embarks from her derelict ship, but she has no idea she's walking right into living hell. On this planet, you'll encounter strange plants and wildlife that is completely alien and completely intent on your demise. By exploring Atropos, you can achieve higher power in the form of weapons, abilities, upgrades, but most of which will only last until you die. Once you dive even deeper into the planet, you uncover the remnants of a precursor civilization. You come across hieroglyphs, and after you learn them, you can eventually translate these messages left behind. And it's all part of piecing together the wild story of this game. You find out quickly that something is completely wrong about this planet. For some strange reason, Celine is incapable of dying. She always comes back to the same point every time she dies. She even starts to find her own audio logs, but she doesn't remember recording any of them.
Recorded log found. Adding to databank. Playing back now. Scout log. Atropos. Elapsed time, 30 minutes since last crash. Whole areas of this forest are rearranging themselves like a fluid puzzle after each of my... Whenever I return, per Astra protocol, I will not be recovered until I reach the broadcast signal. If you're hearing this, you are stuck here too. I don't remember recording that.
In order to survive and find out what's going on, you're gonna have to avoid damage in this game like it's the fucking plague. There are health pickups to sustain your life, but if you have a full health bar, every little piece of healing will go toward increasing your maximum HP. Simply put, the less damage you take, the more potential health you stand to gain from consumables and pickups. So as much as you want to kill the enemies, you definitely don't want them to hurt you. Avoid damage, make progress, what's next? Well, this game has an active reloading system. Every time you reload your gun, it's gonna be like a little minigame, where the goal is to reload in the correct timing, and when you do it successfully, you get a significant boost in firepower. Each gun will have a distinct active reload, and on top of that, every gun has a primary and secondary fire. The secondary abilities are random, like a lot of the other things that randomize every new run, so you'll have to be careful when you pick up a gun and make sure that you like the secondary ability. I can't tell you how many times I found a really kick-ass gun, but it had a really poopy secondary and I just had to pass on it. Each death cycle remixes the planet, so you'll have new rooms, new abilities, new things to pick up, etc. Almost everything changes when it comes to the layout, but once you make enough progress, you'll start to unlock special abilities, and you'll be able to keep those when you die. Like for instance, I think the first one you get is like a lightsaber. Now you can hit enemies, you can interrupt them, it changes how you play. But this is Returnal. Every time you get powerful and feel comfortable with how you play, something comes out of left field and kicks your ass. And eventually you get addicted to building and restarting and building and restarting until you have just the right Celine and you're able to stomp ass in the game.
You gotta play the Returnal lottery. You might want an assault rifle, but sometimes you get a pistol.
Sooner than later, you're gonna notice that disturbing or uncanny things start appearing on the planet. Things like a 19th century house, or a 19th century astronaut stalking you from the very corners of your eyes. The audio logs become more and more detached from reality, depicting a Celine who is on the brink of insanity. And you push deeper. By now your comfort is a colorless, distant memory. Celine is knee-deep in her own suffering. She questions why she is not allowed to die. Curiosity or desperation drives Celine to travel across the entire planet. I don't know if Returnal is a horror game per se, but the psychological horror is what compelled me to see the journey all the way through. You have to pay close attention to the tidbits, the little clues here and there, and you start to wonder, how sane is Celine? Can we even trust what we experience through her eyes? And if you're like me, you're gonna start wondering, what the hell is going on? Like, I had so many theories, and none of them ended up being close, but I deeply appreciate that the game asks you to think about what's going on. It gets pretty metaphysical and deep, and for me, Returnal is just profound. If you want to experience this firsthand, not have it spoiled, go to this timestamp. We'll meet up back there. I've been dancing around them, but let's go all the way to the deep end. Alright, finally, I get to tell you what the hell is going on. Celine fights, ripping and tearing, unwilling to give up, all the way to the tallest point of Atropos. She's been following a signal called the White Shadow, and it leads her all the way to the big bad Nemesis. This cerebral demon straight up defies words. He's a fitting mastermind who can bend reality itself. But after slaying this enemy just like the rest, Celine is able to regain her consciousness and finally confront the White Shadow. All of her dreams come true as she realizes the White Shadow is how she escapes the planet. It was always a rescue distress call. Celine is rescued and returned to Earth where she is given a hero's welcome. She lives a long and fulfilling life until she passes away from old age. Except something is still terribly wrong. We watch through Celine's eyes as she's lowered into her grave. She takes one last look at this life before she wakes up again on Atropos. Somehow, someway, Celine is still trapped in the cycle. She really was rescued, and she really did live on Earth. But even if she dies off the planet, she is still trapped by the cycle. Whatever is keeping her trapped on this planet is not dead. It's not gone. Celine felt the comfort of death on Earth until it was brutally stripped from her hands. So she picks herself up, even more determined to escape. This is effectively the New Game Plus. You'll be traveling through the same levels, but every level is given a facelift. You know it's the same place, but it looks completely different. Every level will have a new boss, and every level will contain new enemies, meaning you'll have to find new ways to survive. Your power level is still escalating at this point though, and there's still new abilities to find. And honestly, Celine is like scary powerful by the end, but you'll still have a challenge. If you're like me, then you're probably hoping that this version of Atropos has some answers, and we get some kind of answer, but I think it's more like perspective. When you defeat the final boss, you're treated to a flashback. Or is it? I don't know. I mean, it could have happened, it could have never happened. We see a woman driving at night with a child in the back seat. Presumably they're on their way home. It's Celine, or somebody who looks exactly like her. The two are listening to Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult, which is a motif of the game. And by that I mean you'll actually see and hear this song throughout the whole game. All is well until suddenly the 19th century astronaut appears in front of Celine, causing her to swerve and crash off a bridge into a large body of water. We watch the two sink into the depths. Celine tries, but she cannot save Helios. After escaping the car herself, she looks into the abyss, and in my interpretation, this is the true villain of this game. Whatever this thing is, it has to be causing the cycle. Returnal is a game that ends with more questions than answers. As the player, we're allowed to feel pleased and proud of ourselves for reaching the end, but I think this is the game telling us that this suffering will never end for Celine. And I think it's a way for the game to teach us not to take comfort for granted. No matter how hard or imposing life can be, Returnal tells us we have to keep picking ourselves back up. I mean, geez, when you feel comfortable in Returnal, it's like the game is alive and it does everything it can to rip that comfort straight out of your hands. And it might sound crazy, but that's one of the things I love about this game. I'll be honest, I'm making this video begging anybody to go and try Returnal because somehow it flew under so many people's radar. But it is incredible, it is profound, and it is definitely one of my favorite games ever made.